Our last class we talked about the pivot table, if you remember นะครับ the things that we had from the pivot table on last class was that we had to hang on, let me just like clear out all the filter first นะครับ from the pivot table that we had on last class we highlight all of them นะครับ all of the data นะครับ that we had normally they are like the data that we normally get from like a log file from the point of sale systems นะครับ or we have sales transactions like this. The reason why do we need to have the pivot table is because whenever we need to just like summarize some data and group the data according to whatever we need. For example, if you would like to group the data by the sellers, if you would like to group the data by regions of the zone or area that we sell the products, or we group the data by the products นะครับ we normally use the pivot table to help because otherwise you have to just like sort the data first and then just like group them manually and then sum each of the group นะครับ or each of the zone or each sales that are like sold by our sales representative manually นะครับ so that's why we normally use the pivot table to help. So in order to create a pivot table, it's not difficult at all นะครับ we have to highlight all the data that we would like to create a pivot table, including its header นะครับ we go to insert and then choose pivot table นะครับ after that we just like specify the options that we want to have, whether we would like to create as a new worksheet or not นะครับ in this case suppose I want to create in a new worksheet, I click OK, and after that you can see that on the right hand side there is pivot table fields that you can choose นะครับ what field that you would like to display. For example, I would like to show the buyer นะครับ and I want to show the amount paid, let's say something like that. This is the easy way in order to group the data นะครับ as we can do it easily นะครับ so in this one นะครับ when we would like to get, for example, suppose we say that we would like to know the sellers นะครับ as well นะครับ the seller might be on each column, something like that. This one it will show it will be shown, the data in the pivot table will be shown by the buyers against the seller นะครับ and the grand total นะครับ okay, so the things that we had นะครับ okay, on last class I did on this one, the save path and whole wallet. You can just like play with like this data as well นะครับ it's the same thing นะครับ and after that I just like show you how do we gonna create the pivot chart. The way in order to create pivot chart is that you just like click on any cells in the pivot table first นะครับ and go to insert as well and then choose pivot charts นะครับ and choose the type of pivot chart that you would like to display. And also I started talking about the tools that we call it as data visualization tools. Data visualization tools are the tools that help us to view the data นะครับ in terms of graphical ways นะครับ instead of showing the numbers in the table like this. You can see that if you are in the meeting room นะครับ the table like this might be like difficult to compare. So that's why we try to just like visualize them in terms of graphical display, like a chart like this instead นะครับ so you can just like choose many kind of chart as you like, and after that when you have like different kind of charts already นะครับ whenever we would like to have the hang on like this, okay, suppose I have this one, I would like to control this chart นะครับ for example, if I just like want to just see the data that has been sold to Miss Cat, let's say, the things that I can do is that, okay, for some of the Microsoft Excel version นะครับ you have the tools like a drop down list in the chart directly นะครับ that you can choose who is the buyer นะครับ so you can choose Miss Cat นะครับ and then you can see that all the data is just like updated as well. But in this one Microsoft Excel try to provide the tools for you นะครับ to make this kind of pivot chart as the dashboard นะครับ we can control them by just like some buttons. For example, in here I want to have a button to control for the buyer list of buyers. The things that I normally have to do is that I just have to choose the chart first, or I have to choose like on the pivot table first. After that, I just like do the same thing. I just click on insert, and you can see that on the right hand side of the chart we have slicer นะครับ we have slicers. We just click on slicer and then choose what kind of slicer would you like to have. For example, if you would like to slice the data to be shown by the name of the buyer นะครับ and the name of the seller, you can just like choose many slicers as you want, and after that you just like click and choose it. And one tips นะครับ in slicer that you have to know is that in some of the Microsoft Excel นะครับ in some computers, if you just like use the slicer, sometimes it causes your computer to be freezing นะครับ so before you just like use any slicer, save your file first นะครับ this one I always do it because otherwise I have to reopen my file. But for you have to be careful because in the examination, if you just put the slicer นะครับ in the same workbook as other questions นะครับ in according to the instruction, if you don't save it, it's just like accidentally close everything for you นะครับ so that means you may lose everything นะครับ so be careful whenever you have to use slicer. Save the file first นะครับ okay, now let's see. I have the buyer slicer and seller slicer. If I say that I want to show or I want to see what Miss Paula purchased from us, I just click on the slicer, and then you can see that in here it shows like the information that Miss Paula นะครับ that Miss Paula purchased from us. You can see that in here Miss Paula purchased from this one is Miss Paula นะครับ Miss Paula purchased from Andrew, Cindy and Jane นะครับ Andrew, Cindy and James นะครับ so if I see Mr. Smith purchased from Andrew and Cindy only นะครับ something like that. So it depends on our control how would we like our dashboard to be นะครับ and this one we call it as dashboard because you can control all the charts according to the data that we have in the pivot chart and pivot table as well นะครับ and the data in the pivot chart and pivot table will be changed นะครับ will be displayed according to the slicer that we choose. After we have the slicer already นะครับ this is the first part or the introduction part of data visualization. We still have like lots of visualization tools that we have to learn นะครับ but the rest of the data visualization tools are not for the pivot table anymore. It will be for like the general purposes that I will just like talk about it next on นะครับ okay, after that, when we had the pivot table and pivot chart already นะครับ let me delete this one out. I don't use this sheet นะครับ okay, I ask you to download this file นะครับ I ask you to download this file from the e-learning นะครับ. so for anyone who haven't downloaded the data from e-learning yet นะครับ please go to download the data from e-learning called SumIf and SumIfs data file นะครับ so you should get the things like this นะครับ. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the functions that we call it as SumIfs นะครับ, and I'll continue with like two more functions that are similar นะครับ CountIf and CountIfs นะครับ. so these four functions actually if you have a look นะครับ the original functions from these four functions, we have just two, they are derived from two major functions. The first one is sum นะครับ the other one is function count นะครับ for function sum we learn already นะครับ function sum is just like to add up the values นะครับ but for the count function นะครับ the count function is the function that we use to count the number of cells นะครับ according to the sales that we choose นะครับ that those are like original functions นะครับ of the function sum if s, count if, and count if s. But we have another keyword นะครับ that comes in if นะครับ sum if, count if, what are they? When we have if in here, it means that we have criteria to choose. You do the sum if means that you sum only when the condition is met นะครับ you count นะครับ for count if it means that you count those cells when the condition is met. That means you don't count every cell. You count according to the condition. The condition here will be specified by if function นะครับ okay. What about s? S means multiple นะครับ it means that if you have one criteria we use count if, but if you have many criteria to judge นะครับ for summing we use sum if s. If you have like many conditions or many criteria to judge we use count if s นะครับ so this one are like the function sum if s, count if, and count if s that we have to learn นะครับ okay. So let's start with the first one first. Let's have a look นะครับ in this one นะครับ okay. Let's filter all of these column first นะครับ we will filter from buyer to payment method นะครับ that are column B to column H. So when you download this file to your computer already นะครับ open it up and then let's see, we will highlight from column B to column H นะครับ so that we can prepare the filtering. Then we go to data menu นะครับ then you choose filter. So right now as we learned earlier when we have to do the filtering นะครับ after we highlight นะครับ or we select all of the column that we want to do the filtering already. The next thing is that you just click, after you click on the column, after you click on the filter menu, the things that you see is that it is what to say, it is the triangle, a small triangle นะครับ with a square. In here it means that we have the what to say, filtering นะครับ on for these columns already นะครับ okay. So the next thing that we have to do is that okay, we just like choose whatever columns นะครับ that we would like to do the filtering นะครับ let's see. For this one, okay, what are we going to do? This one belong นะครับ suppose I'll start from sum if first นะครับ I'll start from sum if first. Okay. Suppose we would like to know that okay, I want to know that okay, I want to find นะครับ I want to find, hang on, let me just like clear the color first so that you not be confused. Sorry. Suppose I say that I want to know that how much นะครับ how much did Susan นะครับ did Susan sell the product for us นะครับ how much did Susan. In this case, okay, if you don't have any ideas about the sum if, the things that people normally do is that they will just apply the filter first, and then Susan is our seller, then we just like filter just only for Susan only นะครับ okay. So now you get the seller who is Susan already. Then we sum these amount นะครับ we just sum all of these values that Susan sold for us, and you get 1698 นะครับ you get 1698. In this one you can see that if we have just like tens of records like this, it's okay นะครับ it's not too difficult for us. But in reality when you have to deal with lots of data นะครับ that is in normal things in business, we have like thousands or tens of thousands of records in the same worksheet. The way that you have to just like handpick the amount that Susan sold for us, it is not easy anymore. That's why we need to have a function that help us instead. Okay, in this example, 1698 or 1698 here. If we would like to use a functions to help, to help, what are we going to do? Or what function do we have to use? In this one, you can see that because we have a criteria, that is seller. You know that Susan is a seller. So that means the sales will be counted, will be summed by like some sellers only and okay, you can see that Susan is just one seller Susan is just one seller. So the functions that we have to use in here is the function called SUMIF is what we call SUMIF. Now let's see SUMIF function first, and then you see how do we gonna use the SUMIF in order to find how much did Susan sold for us. In this one I go to function SUMIF so in this one I click on insert function and then I just type SUMIF. SUMIF followed by three criteria, arguments. The first one is range second one is criteria, and third one is sum range. I'll explain to you next on SUMIF will add the cell specified by a given condition or criteria okay, so what are they let me just explain to you. Okay, let's have a look what are range, what are criteria, and what are sum range. You can see that in here the range means the range of cells that store the value that you would like to evaluate as a criteria. So that means the range here means that which column store the name of the seller. Store the name of the seller it's not the range of like the value that you want to sum so in this one the range is here, and then when you would like to choose the range it is here. This is the range okay. Next, criteria. We say that in here we want to know the sales of a person called Susan. So Susan is the criteria of us. And lastly, sum range. Sum range are the range of the sales that consists of the value that we would like to sum them up. In this one, it's amount paid in this case it's amount paid in this case, sorry. Okay, this one okay. So right now we are going to try on this function SUMIF and see how it works. Okay, so in this one let's have a look. I will do I'll use the SUMIF function to find. I do it once again, SUMIF, and then I choose like all the arguments. First one is range is the list of the sellers. The next one, the criteria, is the seller name. Then I type Susan. The trick for entering the text in you can see that in here I type Susan only but the proper way is that if it is a text, you should put double quote and followed by the text inside For example, in here I type double quote and then Susan. Why is that? If you have a look on the range that we highlight from C2 to C26, the example of the data store in here, you can see that Susan it's in the double quote as well. Susan is in the double quote as well. So normally in Microsoft Excel, every text that you enter if it is in the formula you should put double quotes to surround that text it is the correct way to do okay. All right, but if it is a number, no need to do you just type the number straight away. Another benefit of using double quote is that if you type something wrong, for example, you type the name with a space, you know immediately that, okay, there is a space between the last character and the double quotes, and then you know immediately that you just like accidentally put a space in here, so that you can just like clear it out easily. Next, sum range, you just like highlight the corresponding cells in the column that you have the data to be stored. You can see that in here for the range and sum range, if you have a look properly it's from row 2 to row 26 for both. They must be matched for the row number like this so that it can be just like the things that SUMIF will do is that firstly it just check from the range column. When it sees Susan, it just find 380. Okay, the next Susan 968. Cindy no, and then go on, see another Susan 160, and lastly Susan another 160 something like that, and then it scans through until the end of the range that you specify, and then Excel doesn't see any other Susan, so that's why it stops and report you with the answer. And you can see that the answer in here, it shows 1698 that is like the value that you did the filtering and sum before so this is the SUMIF. You can see that in this case Susan can sell for us $1,698 so this is the way that we do with the SUMIF for Susan. Apart from that one okay, the next one that I want to know is that, okay, if I want to know that, okay, how much could we sell book? Okay, how much could we sell book? This one, okay, I want you to try by yourself. I want you to try by yourself. Use SUMIF to find the sales for book for me. Okay. I give you 3 minutes to do that. Find the amount of money that we sold books. So in this one, I just show you the correct value first. Correct value should be $1,330. Okay, please use the SUMIF to find out the amount of the book sold. So in this one, the way we did is the same. We want to just like find the amount for the books that we sold. That means the range we will evaluate for column D to find the book, just the books transaction, and after that sum range is amount paid in column G. So in this one I do the same thing. I go to SUMIF and the range is the goods from D2 to D26. Criteria is book in the double quotes and sum range is amount paid okay in here. So you can see that we get 1330 1330 for the amount of book that we sold So any questions for this example number 2? So if you don't have any questions another example that I just want to show you is that we can also apply the SUMIF instead of just like typing the criteria manually like this. You can see that in this one I type book like this. When you type any constant value when you type any constant value in the functions in here like when we type book like this, when we type Susan like this typing the constant value here in the function we call it as hard code นะครับ let me just call it explain to you what is it, what is a hard code. Hard code means that you type นะครับ or you enter the constant inside your function. It works นะครับ it works in this case. You can see that we can get the amount that Susan sold and the amount of book นะครับ that we sold to the customer correctly. But the hard coding cause some difficulties in some situation นะครับ What does it mean? What difficulties that may happen? If you would like to know some other sellers, or if you would like to know some other type of the goods that we sold, we have to go back to that sale and change in the formula นะครับ Sometimes it's not easy to do. Let's have a look นะครับ If I just double click on the function on the cell directly, you can see that in here I have to go and change the text Susan in this function, or I change the textbook in this function นะครับ But in this one, another way that we can do is that instead of doing the hard code, we use the relative reference. It's easier นะครับ If we use relative reference, how it looks like นะครับ Suppose I am asked to find out the sales of each product นะครับ If I have food, toys, movie, DVD, and book. So instead of hard code in the function นะครับ by doing one at a time, I just do the function. I just do the function sum if นะครับ in one cell, and then I copy this function to other cells like this. So in this one นะครับ I just go to do the sum if นะครับ range is type of goods. After that, criteria, I just choose the cell that I have. In this case, it's B36 in my example for food, and some range. I just highlight the amount paid column, and then I get the value here. So you can see that in this one it's easier because if you just change food to be book, let's see, it just like update for us automatically นะครับ instead of go to the function and then replace นะครับ or substitute food with book, something like that นะครับ okay, but you have to be careful in this function นะครับ if you want to just like copy this function down นะครับ for other product, don't forget to lock the cells นะครับ because otherwise it will be wrong นะครับ it will be wrong. You can see that right now if I just copy the book that I sold is wrong already, because actually it must be 1330 นะครับ. So because I don't lock the cells นะครับ. So in this one I have to lock the cells for the range and some range นะครับ in here, because otherwise it will be moved down นะครับ okay, so I lock. After that I copy นะครับ okay, so this is the trick that you should know นะครับ in the reality we do like this instead of typing one cell at a time นะครับ to find the amount นะครับ in the sum if. Okay, now that's all for sum if. Up to this point, do you have any questions ครับ for sum if? If you don't have any questions นะครับ let's move on to the next function, that is sum if s. The sum if s is the extension from the sum if นะครับ a bit, because sum if s you have more than one criteria นะครับ in order to be evaluated นะครับ in order to be evaluated. So for the sum if s นะครับ okay, let's see the function sum if s syntax นะครับ the syntax for the sum if s นะครับ is that you have some range, criteria range, and criteria, and dot dot dot. I hope that you remember dot 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 นะครับ dot 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 means we have more arguments than this นะครับ we can have more argument than this, just in case that you have more than one criteria to judge นะครับ okay, but you can see that in here นะครับ the difference between the sum if and sum if s is that the order of the arguments นะครับ switch reordered. For the basic sum if นะครับ sum range is on the back นะครับ we have the criteria range and criteria first, and then we follow by the sum range. But for sum if s, we start with the sum range first นะครับ Suppose we have more than one criteria. It will be criteria 2 and then criteria, something like this นะครับ Say, oh, okay, let's see. So let's see the meaning of each criteria นะครับ sorry, each argument. For the sum if s, it will add the cells specified by a given of set of conditions or criteria นะครับ That means you have more than one criteria, then you use sum if s. If you have just one criteria only, you have to use sum if นะครับ Otherwise the cell may generate the wrong value to you or may generate the error to you นะครับ Sum range is the range of the cells that we would like to add นะครับ For example นะครับ in this case we may just like would like to sum the amount paid นะครับ Then the amount paid will be our sum range. Criteria range means the cells that may contain your criteria นะครับ and criteria means a value, for example the number or the text that match with what we want to have นะครับ okay, so let me just like start with the first example นะครับ In this example, suppose we would like to find the total amount of food sold นะครับ by Andrew นะครับ food sold by Andrew. In this one นะครับ in this one you can see that you have to find out the what to say, the sum range criteria first before we start using the sum if s นะครับ Let me hide the previous example first. Okay, let's have a look นะครับ In this one you can see that we would like to find the amount of food sold. That means this one is a sum range. It will be amount paid นะครับ It will be amount paid. In this one I use amount paid as my sum range. After that, criteria range. Criteria range number one here means that okay, I want to find the amount of food นะครับ of food that means food should be goods นะครับ The criteria range number one for me is the goods นะครับ in here, while criteria number one that I have is food นะครับ is food. Criteria range 2 sold by Andrew. So Andrew, who is a seller นะครับ Andrew is a seller. So criteria range 2 is my seller. And then criteria 2 is Andrew นะครับ is Andrew. So we will compile all of these things นะครับ to find the total amount of food sold by Andrew. Then let's see นะครับ let's start. You can see that in here I just like start using the sum if s นะครับ I type sum if s once again นะครับ and then click OK. So when we start, it will just like in the function argument box will show just sum range and criteria range 1 first. But if you when you click criteria range 1, it just add some more text box for you นะครับ so that you can add the range the criteria and criteria range to next on นะครับ so sum range here I start with choosing amount paid นะครับ amount paid. Criteria range 1, see right now criteria 1 is pop up already. Criteria range 1 is the goods นะครับ criteria 1 is, let me hard code นะครับ in this example, food. Then criteria range 2 is the seller, and then I type criteria range 2 as Andrew. So for criteria range 3 and so on, it will be added นะครับ below นะครับ if you like. But if you say that, okay, I have just two criteria only นะครับ one is seller, the other one is goods, then you can stop นะครับ you click OK. So you can see that right now the intermediate result is showing as $1,080 นะครับ for Andrew. So this is the way that we choose two criteria altogether นะครับ $1,080. Now if you want to make sure that whether it's correct or not for $1,080 นะครับ we will manually check it. We will manually check it. So amount of food นะครับ food, then I just choose the goods that is food first. Okay, these are food นะครับ so by Andrew, then I choose Andrew who is a seller นะครับ in here you can see that these are four records นะครับ of food that are sold by Andrew นะครับ and then you can see that if I sum them up, oh, hang on, I just like sum the wrong column, sorry. It's here 360 by 160 by 200 and by 360 $1,080. Yeah, that is the correct one นะครับ so this is the amount of food sold by Andrew by using sum if s นะครับ by using sum if s. Okay, so in this example นะครับ do you have any question for the example of the sum if s? Right, okay, so if you don't have any questions นะครับ I will let you do this second example by yourself นะครับ I want you to find